question I get a lot from competitors and people who are engaging in fat loss phases where they're going to try and get really lean is, hey, what kind of training should I use for a fat loss phase? And my advice isn't really that sexy. You should dance with what brought you. What builds muscle best will likely maintain it best. In fact, one of the things I see is one of two mistakes. One, either people think that there are specialized fat loss programs that are body fat burning. At the end of the day, energy expenditure is energy expenditure. Some of these fat loss training programs where people are jumping around like some sort of orangutans, typically, yes, they make a nice calorie burn, but keep in mind that if you're not applying progressive overload and if you're not applying the principles of progressive overload, you're actually more likely to pull increased energy from lean body mass. So the goal should be to maximize the energy you pull from body fat and not lean body mass. And that comes through resistance training and progressive overload. So in that way, a properly periodized progressive overload training program that maximizes muscle recruitment and stimulation is actually the best fat burning program there is, because you are preferentially going to pull more energy from body fat compared to lean tissue. If you continue to try to force the muscle to adapt, the muscle will be greedy with energy because it must adapt, and therefore, in order to compensate for that, body fat is going to have to give up a disproportionate amount of energy. However, if you start training light because, well, I'm in a fat loss phase, I need to burn more calories, so I'm going to do, circuit trainings. You start training lighter with less intensity, and when I say intensity, I mean in terms of how close you're training to failure and using heavier weights, then you're not applying that same mechanical tension and stress to the muscle tissue, and it has less reason to maintain that muscle tissue. So in that way, these fat burning workouts are actually worse than a properly periodized progressive overload training program. So now, the second mistake I see people make is they start training with less intensity when they're in a fat loss phase. They say, well, I'm losing fat, so I know I'm going to lose strength. Why do you know that? Why do you know that? In fact, during almost every fat loss phase I've ever done, I have managed to get stronger during that phase up to a certain point. Once you get to a certain point of leanness, yes, you probably are going to lose some strength simply because you're just not going to have that much energy. But I promise you it's not going to happen in the first 2 weeks of you dieting. Like if you lose strength in the first couple weeks of dieting, that's here. That's not in your muscles. So really focus with the intent that you are going to do everything you can to get stronger during this phase and maintain that strength during this phase. I can't tell you how many people I see, they say, well, I know I'm going to lose strength and I don't have the same amount of energy, so I'm just going to back off and train lighter. No, what you are telling your muscle tissue is, hey, we're not applying the same stress. We don't need all this energetically expensive muscle tissue, so we can start shedding some of it. You don't want that. Now, I'm also not saying you shouldn't make any adjustments to your training. For example, when I am show lean, things like barbell back squats become extremely difficult to stabilize because I'm so lean. I don't have the same amount of girth in my waist. I don't feel as stable, and I feel like there's increased probability of possible injury. And plus, it's just so fatiguing compared to the stimulus I'm getting. So I think modifying your exercise selection can be a great idea, and applying tension to those muscles with things like hack squats or leg press, or something that still has a large stimulus and you can progressively overload, but that doesn't have such a high level of fatigue. So I think modifications in that way are fine, but you should still be trying to get a large number of difficult sets in, properly periodizing, and focusing on progressive overload and trying to get stronger, lifting more weights during this time, and slowly increasing your volume as part of a overall strategy of progressive overload and periodization.